Hey kids, welcome to the Far Out podcast. My name is James, I am your host, and it feels so good to be back behind the mic recording for y'all. And in between episodes, in between recordings, I'm drawing up show notes of things that I want to talk about, whether that's from movies to sports to books, so on and so forth. And on paper, literally on paper, this episode that you're listening to, that I'm recording right now, this has the potential to be the biggest episode I've done yet because there's so much I want to discuss. There's the most notes about the topics that I'm going to hit. So we'll see how this comes out in the edit. But yeah, I have a lot that I want to get to today. So let's just dive right in and let's see what we're going to start with. Yes, Superman, because what else would I talk about? Yes, kids, if you've listened to any episode of the podcast previously, you'll know that I'm incredibly excited for this new Superman movie. It is my most anticipated film of 2025, and it comes out this July. And there's been a lot of talk about the importance of this film, not just for theaters, not just for film fans, not even for comic book fans who are just over the moon about it like I am, but there's talk about how important this film could be for a literal leg of the industry, that being Warner Brothers, the studio behind this upcoming film. And if you don't know, there is a lot of potential with this movie because Superman is poised to set up a series of films akin to what Marvel has with the Avengers. And the Marvel movies underneath the Disney umbrella have been uber successful. We have three Iron Mans, three Captain America, no, four Captain Americas now, four Thor films, four Avengers films with two more on the way, at least two more. And their batting average for these films have been like near $1 billion each. So Disney and Marvel have just been, mowing cash in and whatnot. And DC and Warner Brothers wants that same treatment for their film slate, for their superhero ensembles, and of course their new lineup of superhero films, their new universe is going to start off with this upcoming Superman film. And so there's a lot of pressure and a lot of eyes on this film regarding the actual studios that work behind it. And there is talk that Warner Brothers, the studio behind Looney Tunes and previous superhero films and dramas, if you pick a movie out of a hat, the odds of Warner Brothers making it are quite high. There is talk that Warner Brothers, the studio itself, is dependent on the success or failure of Superman, and that there is so much riding on this movie in terms of financial investment, not just for this movie, but also for, as I said, their future slate of DC films, that if Superman were to, say, fail, air quotes, fail, then the studio, Warner Brothers, could go the way of Fox. And again, if you've been on the internet inside of the last, 5, 6, 7 years, Fox used to be its own independent studio. They're the studio that brought us the X-Men movies and Star Wars, and then Disney went and bought Fox, and now they have everything under their umbrella as well. So now Disney has access to their Marvel characters such as the X-Men, and Fantastic Four and so on and so forth. But Disney bought Fox, and at one point Fox was an independent studio known as 20th Century Fox, and now they are known as Fox Studios underneath Disney. And so now there's talk that if, say, Superman weren't to launch as much as Warner Brothers wants, that Warner Brothers could be up for acquisition in the same way that Fox was. And I have a lot of thoughts on this. I do. And what's interesting regarding Warner Brothers is that over the course of the last, I'd say, 10 years, the studio has actually been up for sale a few times. And they've actually changed handlers a few times already. Funny enough, as I mentioned Fox, I believe around maybe 10 years ago or maybe 8 years ago, and I'd have to do more research on this, or you yourself could. At one point, Warner Brothers did pitch themselves to be purchased by Fox. Before Fox was sold to Disney, there was the idea that potentially Warner Brothers could be sold to Fox. And I believe that was for around 40 billion, or was it 80? I can't remember. And that's a huge net between 40 to 80 billion. Don't quote me on that. But I know for certain that at one point Warner Brothers was up for sale and Fox had their chance to buy it. And the reason why I know that is because if you listen to a previous episode of the podcast, I talked about how I really appreciate John Campea and the reporting that him and his team do over at their account there. And at one point, they covered that story many years ago. So Warner Brothers was going to be potentially bought by Fox many years ago. Fox said no, thank you, and Warner Brothers ended up going on their merry way and doing their own thing. Well, uh, previously, inside of the last decade as well, at one point, Warner Brothers was purchased by AT&T. Yeah, if you're not aware of that, kids, the cell phone company, that provider bought Warner Brothers. They wanted to get into the content creation world, the movie creation world, and they had the studio for a couple of years, and they quickly got out of that deal because they realized that that was more than they could handle. They weren't really prepared for that kind of content creation, and they lost a lot of value on Warner Brothers to the tunes of tens of billions of dollars. And so, for a brief period of time, I don't remember exactly when, AT&T, the cell phone company, they did have Warner Brothers underneath their own umbrella. Warner Brothers then got sold and got picked up by Discovery. Yeah, and that may surprise you too, kids. Is that, you think of Discovery and you think of what? The Discovery Channel, that network, like Warner Brothers buy Discovery. No, kids, it's actually the other way around. Discovery bought Warner Brothers, and I believe that happened, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, sometime around there, I'd say. I think it was maybe pre-pandemic or right during the pandemic. But yeah, Discovery bought Warner Brothers, and now if you watch a Warner Brothers movie released today, it's labeled as a Warner Brothers Discovery film. That's the title that's underneath the films. And so, literally over the course of, I mean, honestly, like a decade, maybe two tops, Warner Brothers has already switched hands twice, if not more than twice, and you can see this as you watch the movies that they've produced and released over the years, because again, their titles will change and whatnot. So you can literally catalog a history of this studio, and so the idea that Warner Brothers could be sold again is frankly nothing new, and I don't think it should be surprising to anyone because and I'm getting really deep in the weeds here, but they have a head of studio, or they have a, the leader of them over there. His name is David Zaslav, and there's been reports that when he came in to run Warner Brothers, it was simply to prepare it for another acquisition. He was, and again, this is conjecture, but there was talk that he was brought in to cut off the fat of the studio to then make it more presentable for other buyers to potentially scoop it up. And at one point, I think Apple briefly looked at buying Warner Brothers, but this was never really confirmed. It's just kind of been hearsay because since Zaslav came in to run WB, he's cut a lot of projects. Notably, being at one point there was a Batgirl movie. You have Batman, you got Batgirl, and this Batgirl movie was shot. It was in the can, ready to be released, and David Zaslav said, "Look, we've already spent money on it, but we don't think we're going to recoup that investment if we release this. Like, we don't think we're going to get enough ticket sales, DVD sales, whatever, and so we're going to take a tax write-off and not release it. We'll recoup more via taxes than we would releasing it traditionally," which angered a lot of fans, myself included, because this movie, the Batgirl movie, had Michael Keaton back as Batman. The original Batman, kids, was going to be back in this movie, and he was going to be fighting alongside Batgirl, which was a bummer to not get to see that. But then also there was talk that, well, there's also this other movie in existence, a Looney Tunes movie called Coyote versus Acme, which is, Coyote versus Roadrunner. So you have that classic character there. And this was a very meta movie, a very, self-aware movie in the sense that, so Coyote in Looney Tunes, all the contraptions he makes, the catapults, the anvils, the dynamite that he uses to try to trap the Roadrunner, the joke is that they always quite literally blow up in his face. And that's where the comedy comes in, is that, the coyote is always getting launched off his own catapult, or the dynamite will explode prematurely and it'll blast him over a canyons, over a canyon, or over, into a canyon or whatnot. And so and all the tools that he had used to make his contraptions were made by this company called Acme. And so there was this movie made about Coyote versus Acme, where in a very self-aware, joking way, Coyote, the character Coyote, the Looney Tunes character, was going to sue the Acme company. He was going to sue the company, Acme, for always making, defective products. Like, I can't catch the Roadrunner, Your Honor. Their dynamite doesn't work. Their catapults don't work. I'm always getting hurt. And this movie was shot. It was made, and it's very Who Framed Roger Rabbit-esque in the sense that it's like filmed for real, like with real people in a real setting. But then you have, the coyote, just inserted there as a cartoon character. So it's cartoons interacting with humans. And John Cena was casted in this movie. And again, this movie exists. It's in the can. It could be released, but Warner Brothers took a tax write-off on that too because they thought we can't recoup our investment via this Looney Tunes movie, though potentially there could be a future with that. I've heard that despite the tax write-off already being processed, that potentially there are now other buyers that think that, hey, maybe we want this film after all, and then that gets into a whole legal dispute of, well, the taxes already happened, and then, do you still want it? Okay, you do, but we need now more money to get out of this tax thing. That's a big mess. But my point is that Zaslav came in, and he's cutting off a lot of gristle, so to speak, to potentially increase the value of Warner Brothers and to make it look presentable for other studios and buyers to potentially acquire Warner Brothers. And so there's talk that if Superman were to say go belly up, if Crypto the Superdog were to go paws up, and this film doesn't work, if their financial investment for the next 10 years doesn't start properly, then potentially Warner Brothers could be acquired by another studio, very similar to how Fox was acquired by Disney. Okay, look, do I think Warner Brothers will be sold to a different handler in my lifetime? Yes. Do I think they will be sold if Superman fails? No, I do not. And this really gets into the meat of the topic that I have for the podcast today is we have to figure out what we determine to be a failure for this film. Is it strictly financially? If the film does not recoup their investment, if there's not enough ROI on Superman, is it a failure? It's a very easy way to determine if it is a failure or not. Okay, but what if it's a financial failure, but it goes great with the audiences? Do you then stick to your guns and run back the formula, make a sequel, and now double down on the fact that, look, Superman didn't reach a lot of audiences, but those that it did loved it. Now we know that with this sequel and the good word of mouth, they're going to increase the numbers and they're going to come back for the second one. There's potential with that. Or do you define success in the reverse? It makes a lot of money, it gets return on its investment, but the fans don't like it. And this is an interesting thing because this is kind of what Warner Brothers faced previously with their former slate of superhero films. You've got Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman, Aquaman. A lot of these films made money, but they weren't received well via fans. Most notably, sadly, is that movie, Batman vs. Superman. Arguably the biggest comic book movie to ever be made, even bigger than the Avengers. You literally have Batman fighting Superman on the big screen, and fans did not respond to it. It made money. It made just shy under $1 billion. I mean, that movie should have made $2 billion in its sleep, but it made over 800 million, close to 900 million. You can check that for yourself. Made a lot of money. Made a lot of money. But fans did not respond to it well. And I'm one of those included. I've had to work to like that movie, which is really sad to say. When you think back on the Batman versus Superman film, people go like, it was okay. It was okay. And that's terrible. That's terrible that you leave a movie that gigantic with this bad taste in your mouth, And look, for me, that flavor's still there. But as I said, I've worked to like it because I want to like it because I think I wanted that movie to be great, and everyone did, but it just wasn't. All film is subjective. For some people out there, Batman versus Superman might be the greatest movie they've ever seen. It might be their favorite. Who knows? But overall, generally, it was not received well by audiences. And you saw this trickle down effect of it makes money, but the fans did not like it. And just over the course of the years and the decades, that was the trend of DC, to where it would make money, fans wouldn't like it, then the money would go down a little bit each year. And then the fan morale will go down a little each year. Then you have this resurgence with like a Wonder Woman movie, which makes a lot of money and fans really like it. That's a great blip on the radar, but then it goes down to where people are really interested in this movie, hence it makes a lot of money, but it doesn't unite the fans in a unified way. Hence, uh, their eventual return on investment kept on dwindling, and each movie made less money as time went on, and eventually fan interest died out. And so, for Superman to succeed, you have to have both. You have to have fan morale come back, in the sense that they are excited for the movie and for the next movie to come down the pipeline. But that also has to translate into dollars as well. And I think with Superman, it'll be more of the first as opposed to the second. I think fans are really going to get behind this. Do I think it's do I think that's going to translate to Superman being $1 billion film? No, I do not. As much as I would love to see Superman be $1 billion film, billion with an illion, I don't think it's going to get there. And I think the idea of positioning it as $1 billion film is setting yourself up for failure. And so I really hope that Warner Brothers, that inside the halls of that studio, I hope they're not crossing their fingers saying, we need this to hit $1 billion, because if it doesn't, we're screwed. No, no, I don't think that's what they need to do. Nor do I think that's where their expectations, should be. What I've heard of this film, because again, we are now less than 4 months away, which is crazy to think about. There are test screenings happening, and they're under very lock and key, but some details have trickled out from these, and you can make of these what you will, because again, you could say, well, they're under lock and key, they're all just hearsay. Okay, they might be, but there also might be some truth to them as well. And the way the film is described right now, Superman, the way it's described is it's very fun and very joke heavy. People on Twitter and on the internet at large have described it as being in tone with Captain America, the First Avenger, the 2011 film starring Chris Evans as Captain America, and also the first Guardians of the Galaxy, the 2014 one starring Chris Pratt. That's how they describe this Superman film in tone. And that's interesting because both of those are very heroic in a sense. They're very uplifting. Captain America is a very selfless character who's willing to make a sacrifice for anyone. And the Guardians of the Galaxy are a band of misfits which come together, and that equals for a fun adventure, also filled with a lot of jokes. And what's interesting is that James Gunn, who is the director of Superman, he also runs DC Studios at large. He directed the first Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, he directed all three, but he directed that first film. Guardians of the Galaxy is his forte into superheroes. It got him stature with Marvel, and I guarantee you those three movies plus some other ones got him the job at DC that he now has. So the fact that people are describing it as one of Gunn's earlier films doesn't surprise me, nor does it surprise me that they're attributing it to Guardians of the Galaxy. And I think attributing it also to the first Captain America film is great, because that film is very underrated. People love The Winter Soldier because that thing is an epic spy thriller. Then, of course, you love Captain America Civil War because you have Iron Man versus Captain America, which is like Avengers Light, and that film is great. But if you rewatch the first Avenger, that film is really remarkable. It really sells Captain America as being the hero that we're going to see for films and for years to come. And so if Superman can nail that tone in terms of the character, that's great. And then if Superman can also nail the tone of the Guardians for being fun and jovial, that's fantastic. Because as much as I appreciate Man of Steel, and as much as I try to like Batman versus Superman, one of the biggest complaints of those movies, of really the previous slate overall, is that They were not fun, they were not jovial, and they were actually quite dark and grim, both in terms of tone and literal color palette. And so the fact that this new slate, starting with Superman, appears to be an absolute heel change to make it brighter, lighter, and more fun, I think that's going to be huge for the film. And I think that's the formula that works because Marvel, in their films, they go for the family fare, and people will deride them saying they're not taking it seriously. And to me, that's pish posh because again, you watch Captain America: The Winter Soldier, that's a spy thriller, and you watch Captain America: Civil War, that's a movie about what does it mean, to do the right thing versus the wrong thing. Where do your relationships to your friends get in the way of the responsibilities you have as someone who has a sense of duty. So these films have very they have very big plot ideas. They have very rich themes, and so for me, they're not just this amusement park style fare. There absolutely is that, but beneath all the jokes and the fun and stuff like that, there are, I think, really rich themes that make these films compelling. And if Superman can really go after that, I think it's gonna succeed in terms of the tone it wants to establish. In terms of financial profitability, this is interesting because there are talks also that the movie needs, quote, needs to get to 1 billion minimum to be considered profitable when looking at the financial books. And this is coming from the fact that at one point the film was estimated to have a production budget of $364 million. Yes, kids. One movie, this movie Superman, supposedly costed $364 million to make. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. That's more than the Avengers. That's more than Star Wars. I mean, that is literally over a third of $1 billion going into one film alone. What's good about this is that James Gunn, the director, the head of DC Studios, he debunked that number, saying he wished he had a budget that large, but he said that it did not cost that much. He did not clarify as to how much it actually does cost, but he said that it costed under $364 million, which is good because, again, I'm such a film nerd that I follow this stuff closely. Kids, I hate to rain on your parade and give you a little dose of reality, but look, you can go see a film and think it's the greatest thing in the world, and it can set up a sequel. But a lot of the times, the reason why films that set up sequels don't go on to having that sequel or that series of films is simply because there wasn't enough return on the investment. And for a good rule of thumb, for very easy math at home, normally studios are looking to make 3 to 4 times their money back in terms of their budgets. The average is 3, sometimes it gets to 4. So let's say a movie costed $10 million to make. Well, 3 times that, now you're at 30 million. So if a studio can make 30 or more million back overall on this film, it usually goes into the green. And where am I getting that kind of math from? Well, that comes from reading books on film to listening to film pundits and so on and so forth, and just observing film history over the decades. But also you look at, okay, so the budget, if you want to break this down, the budget of a film is say 10 million. Okay, where do I get the other 2 times you have to include that 10? Okay, usually most films will match their production budget, the budget that they use to make the sets, the costumes, the cameras, all that stuff. They will match their production budget to their marketing budget. They will sometimes put in just as much money, if not more money, into their marketing. And what's interesting is that Barbie, the movie with Ryan Gosling and Margot Robbie, they had a higher marketing budget than their actual production budget. They put more money into making sure that film was seen on billboards, talk shows, Twitter, TikTok, you name it. They put more money into marketing that film than they did to actually making it. Hence why that film went on to make as much money as it did because it was in our consciousness for that long that people were, feasting for that movie to come out. So, but typically films will either match their budget in terms of marketing or go a little over. But then the other portion of this third you have to consider as well that people often forget is that the theaters that you go see this at, your local theater, the most Gucci theater ever, doesn't matter. The theaters overall, all the theaters worldwide, they usually on average keep a third of ticket revenue, and then that's divided up amongst the theaters themselves. And so you have 10 million for the production budget, 10 million for marketing, and then a third of overall box office revenue goes back towards the theaters. That's their kickback. Hence why, just also as well, kids, hence why movie theaters have such high prices on their concessions like popcorn and soda, because their ticket revenue is only a small part of their actual revenue that they receive. All their popcorn and soda money they get to keep. That's all theirs. They only get a portion of the kickback that tickets make them. Tickets still bring them money. They do. But that's why popcorn and sodas is so expensive, because that's the real money maker. One of the theater executives, I believe, that worked for either Paramount or Universal, he once said that he's not in the movie business, he's in the popcorn and soda business. He said that tongue in cheek. People gotta laugh, but it's true. It's true. That's really what theaters are all about. The movie itself is meant to just get you in the door. Everything else is the butter on top, so to speak. So anyway, that's the basic breakdown of math. Budget, production budget, and theater cuts. For simple math at home, you can Google a film's budget online, and if you want to know if it quote unquote succeeded, it has to make 3 to 4 times its budget. Well, if Superman, the 2025 film, had a budget of 364 million, if we times that by 3, that equals to 1 billion. I believe my math is right. Yeah, 1,092,092,000,000 dollars. So really, you need a billion flat, or a billion and some change, just to break even. Just to break even for that Superman film in terms of the financial books. I don't think that's the case for this film. If you do a quick Google search right now, the production budget of Superman is reportedly between 150 million to 200 million, which is a very generous spread, because most films nowadays are made for that budget anyways. At least the larger ones, not your artsy dartsy stuff. But okay, so let's assume then that the Superman film costs 200 million to make, which I think is probably sadly correct. 200 mil. You times that by 3, you get 600 mil. Okay, well, let's say, for example, that because Superman is supposedly this highly important film, let's say that there's a little more money than 200 mil going into marketing, which I don't know, because I feel like if they did have a production, or if they did have a marketing budget of that caliber, they would have put something towards the Super Bowl. But who knows? But anyway, let's say that the heads over at Warner Brothers have said, look, we're gonna do a Barbie on this. We're gonna spend more on marketing than we do on the budget itself. Okay, so let's just call it overall 700 mil. They spent 200 on a production, 300 on marketing, and the theaters get their share as well. Let's just say 700 mil is the quote-unquote break-even bar for Superman. Do I think the film can get to 700 mil? Yes, I do. However, I also think I can hit a full court shot on a basketball court. What are the odds of that happening? Not very high. In terms of Superman, I think 700 mil is the high end mark for this film. And that number is based on a few things. I'm not pulling that out of my butt. And also on the low end, I think that Superman will make around 400 mil. And that number is also based on a few things. I'm not pulling that out of my keister as well. The reason why I think Superman will make between 400 and 700 mil is this. 400 mil is what a movie called Black Adam made, or right around there is what Black Adam made. And Black Adam was a DC superhero movie, or I guess you could call it a supervillain movie, depending on how you want to categorize that. But it was a quote superhero or anti-hero movie starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who is arguably the biggest film star working today. And that movie made just under $400 million, coming in at around 393 million. Okay, so you take a movie with a relatively no-name character. Does anyone know who Black Adam is? I do, but do you? I doubt it. Do you know who Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is? Well, I bet you do know who he is as well as I know him too. And that movie, really just based off of his name alone, made around 390 million plus some change. Okay, look, Superman is a bigger character than Black Adam, so you have that going for it. He is arguably the superhero when you think of superheroes and comic book characters. He is the quote poster child for that kind of genre. However, the actor portraying the character of Superman, his name is David Cornsweet, and no one knows who he is. I don't know who he is. I have not seen a single thing he's been in. I heard he was in Twisters, that movie with Glenn Powell. But I really think Superman will be the first thing I see regarding Mr. Cornsweet, which is fine. But you're going off of name recognition for the character. Okay, that's going to equal business as well, hence why Batman films make so much money, every iteration, regardless of who's in the role. But what's also driving this number is that Black Adam, I thought the movie was fine. I thought it was fine. But again, me being a super fan that I am, me thinking it was just fine does not bode well for your film. Because if I think it's fine, and again, I'm a nerd, the general audiences who aren't nerds and who see maybe less than 10 films a year, if they hear the film is okay, they're going to skip it. Hence why they did. Hence why Black Adam, despite having such a big star in the role, it petered out. It didn't do very well. And that's why we never got a sequel, because the reviews weren't good, because the overall film was okay at best. And okay is coming from, again, a superfan. Okay, so if Black Adam is the bar, 390 mil, call it 400 for easy math. Do I think Superman will make more than Black Adam? Yes. Superman is a bigger character. James Gunn is a bigger name in terms of filmmakers. Again, he worked on Guardians of the Galaxy. And I think the film will overall be better than Black Adam because of the early test screening reactions. Okay, so 400 mil that's your floor. I think that's what it'll make. On the high end, being 700 mil. Well, that comes from Man of Steel, which was the movie that's really started the recent iteration of DC superheroes on the big screen. It really more or less properly kicked off with Batman versus Superman, but you could call Man of Steel the prequel to the series, or really the first installment, with BVS really springboarding everything off. But Batman versus Superman, Man of Steel, the last solo Superman film, made 670 mil. Call it easy math, round that up to 700. Okay, so on the low end of a film that did not work inside of a series that just petered out, you have Black Adam at 400. On the high end, being Man of Steel, the last Superman film that started off the last installment of the series of DC films, made 670. Call it 700. Okay, so that's really the window in my estimate, because Man of Steel was considered a success, hence why we got the series that we did, which included BVS, Aquaman, Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman, and so on. Okay, and then, as I said, Black Adam petered out, and the whole thing went belly up. Okay, 400 to 700 mil. Where do I think Superman is going to fall? I think it's going to make, in between that, obviously, 400 to 700. But I think if I want to get real specifically, I think it's going to make more than Man of Steel, but less than 700. I'm going to call it at 675. 675 mil, which is 5 million over what Man of Steel made, but just shy under 700 mil. 700 is a lot of money. That's a lot for a film to make. That's not only audiences embracing your film en masse, that's also repeat business at the theaters. Now, I will see Superman at least twice, at a bare minimum twice. Even if I hate it, I'll see it twice. First time I'm going to go out to get my mind blown, and if I walk out of the theater the first time hating it, I'm going to go back a second time to make sure I hate it, or to see if the film increases with repeat viewings. And if I hate it after two, then I'm probably gonna be out and done. But if I love that film, I'm gonna go back three, four, five times. I saw Dune Part Two 4 times in theaters. I saw Top Gun Maverick 5 times in theaters, and I think I saw Rogue One also 5 times in theaters, or maybe it was four. 4 or 5. Either way, if a movie is good and blows my socks off, for me, you're going to get my money time and time again. And if Superman is that good, if it can bring the goods, you're going to get that kind of business, which could get it close to 700 mil. I don't think this is going to be a $1 billion film. If it is, fantastic. Warner Brothers will be popping champagne bottles. But I think they should also be popping champagne bottles if they can get over 670 mil, which is what Man of Steel did. And there's potential that this film could be better than Man of Steel, or it could be worse. But 670 mil is what Man of Steel did, and that started off the latest or the previous iteration of DC films. So if Superman 2025 can get close to 670, then I think you could have a repeat, you know, success and a repeat business model akin to what Man of Steel did with the former slate of DC movies. So we'll see. But yeah, there's a lot of pressure on Superman because it's potentially starting off this entire series of films and TV shows that potentially have a 4 to 7 to 10 year plan. But now there's this talk about how important it is to the actual future of Warner Brothers itself, and could the studio be set up for acquisition? I don't know. We'll see. I think Warner Brothers will at one point shift hands yet again. Is it entirely dependent on Superman? I don't think so, but it is a large factor. It is a large factor. And look, if Superman has a budget of 300 mil, then sadly the film will need around $1 billion to see quote unquote profitability on the books. But if the film has a budget of around 200 million, then perhaps the film needs closer to 600 to 700 mil to see quote unquote profitability, at which point I think it'll make around 675. And yeah, I think then we could consider Superman a success, at least in the eyes of Warner Brothers and their bookkeepers. But yeah, Superman comes out this July. I can't wait. I hear it's look again from those test screenings. I hear it's good. It's fun. It's jovial. That trailer was amazing. A new trailer's coming. New posters, and we're less than 4 months away. So yeah, bring on Superman. I can't wait, and it comes out this July. Anyway, moving on. The next thing I want to talk about is food related, but it is not root beer or Mountain Dew related. It has to do with sandwiches, specifically sub sandwiches, as I went to Firehouse Subs. Yes, kids, in my home state of North Dakota, in my hometown of Fargo, I went to my local Firehouse Subs, and I never been there before, and I gotta tell you, they really blew me away in the world of sub sandwiches and kind of the fast food ish market of sandwiches. You're gonna gravitate towards Subway. I mean, they are kind of the McDonald's of that kind of eatery, the Coke, if you will, of sandwiches. And I like Subway; they're fine, but I've kind of grown apart from them over the years. I think that their flavor has kind of fallen off recently, and now I more or less prefer Jimmy John's. I think they're really great, and yeah, I went to Firehouse Subs, and boy, I realized I've been missing out on a lot because I really, really enjoyed Firehouse Subs. I thought their flavor was great, and I thought that their literal decor as well was awesome. The one that I went to was literally designed like a firehouse, and they had fireman gear there, such as the uniforms and the oxygen tanks, and they their floor was red and white, and they had pictures of old fire engines around and cool art pieces depicting firefighters, running into burning buildings, and it was great, and I really appreciate that. And I also appreciate Firehouse subs as well because if you don't know, my father is a former firefighter. That was his job. That was his call to action. And so, I'm very pro firefighter, and just the fact that I have some family relation to that kind of world is really special. And so, yeah, just Firehouse subs. They really exceeded my expectations. The one thing I'll say though, and this is both kind of a positive and negative, is that they piled on so much meat, cheese, and veggies and sauces and such that when I ate the sandwich, all the stuff shot out, and landed into the container, which okay, fine, sure. You could say, well, I want a sandwich that, stays in my hands, not on my lap, and it's like, okay, whatever. But it was a delicious, incident because the food tasted so good. But there was so much on there that's the reason why when I bit in, it just shot out. So I'd rather have a full sandwich that's messy than, a thin one that kind of just, you can finish in just a couple of bites. But it was really fantastic. I recommend going to a Firehouse Subs if you can. I believe they're nationwide. I think they're in 40 plus states, 46 states out of the 50 here. So yeah, if you can find a Firehouse Subs, I highly recommend. They're a very cool establishment to look at, and they also taste pretty great. So yeah, I recommend Firehouse Subs for the next time you're craving a sandwich. All right, kids, now we're going to transition into the sports section of today's show, and we're going to start off with baseball. My favorite sport is coming back, kids. Yes, the opening day for the Twins and the Royals and many other teams is March 27th. I believe that's a Thursday. And speaking of the Royals, the Kansas City Royals, they are sold out. The Kauffman Stadium, their home stadium, is sold out for the Royals' home opener, and I could not be happier. Well, I could if the Twins did that for Target Field. Come on, Twinkies, you can do it. But look, as much as I love the Twins, they are my first team when it comes to baseball. The Royals are my backup team, and I really like them. Shout out to Bobby Witt Jr. That guy's a stud. And yeah, Kauffman Stadium, home of the Royals, they are sold out for the home opener. And what could be better than seeing your team play in a full house to start off the season? So I hope it goes well for them, and I hope that the Twins can get some of that magic as well. It'd be really great if we could sell out Target Field for their home opener as well. But we'll see. But yeah, the Royals will have plenty of fans cheering them on as they start off the 2025 season. All right, we are now going to move away from baseball, but still stick in the world of sports. And we're going to talk about football. Yes, kids, even though baseball is hot on our heels, we are now in the off season for football, and this is when interesting trades and acquisitions happen. And boy, there have been a bunch. So much that I'm not going to be able to cover all of them, but I'm going to go through the ones that really interested me from a variety of teams, not just the Vikings, but yeah, many other teams we're going to talk about. And one of them has to do with the Seattle Seahawks, the Sea Pukes, as I like to call them. They nabbed Cooper Kupp, and Cooper Kupp is a real talent. I wish the Vikings could have grabbed him, but he gets cut from his previous team, the L.A. Rams, I think is where he was. And yeah, he got nabbed by Seattle. So I mean, good for him, good for Seattle, good for Kupp. But I really wish the Vikings could have grabbed him. But yeah, anyway, uh, now we're going to talk about some other acquisitions. The Eagles have extended Saquon Barkley, so the Vikings could not get him as well. But I would be flabbergasted if the Eagles did not extend Saquon because the boy is just a train on feet. He can run over anything. So yeah, good for the Eagles. Good for Saquon. He's a lot of fun to watch and also to have on your fantasy football team. Lord knows I suffered from not having him, but maybe this year I will. But yeah, so the Eagles got him, so that's great. The Giants re-signed Tommy DeVito, the gangster QB, so whatever. Tommy's a good personality. Don't know about his arm capabilities, but we'll see. The Giants need help everywhere. They got a high draft pick, though, so we'll see what comes of that. The Broncos have signed Evan Ingram. He was formerly on the Jaguars, I believe. He would have also been a good acquisition for the Vikings. We don't need him, but I this really comes more from my loathing of the Broncos. I do not like the Broncos at all. I like Denver. I like Colorado. But the Broncos, no, I would not cross the street for the Broncos. So yeah, the fact that they got Evan Ingram, I was like, whatever. Uh, the Raiders grabbed Geno Smith. I mean, good for Geno, good for the Raiders. I'm really surprised that Sam Darnold did not go to the Raiders, but we'll talk about Sammy D here in a little bit. But yeah, they got a veteran QB there now in Las Vegas with Smith. The Vikings re-signed Aaron Jones. Fantastic. I thought Jones was really awesome and explosive last year. He was a lot of fun to watch, especially with his ties to Green Bay. So it's fun to poach talent from that team, bring him over to the Vikings, and have him run the ball down Green Bay's throat. So that's great. He's a little older in terms of running backs, and with the current draft for 2025 being so running back heavy, I'm surprised that we did re-sign him to the extent that we did. I believe it's a 2-year deal. But look, it's never a bad idea to keep around talent. And so I'm really happy that Jones is back. Again, he was a lot of fun. He was very effective, and I think he'll be both of those things this year as well. And then the Bills have extended Josh Allen through the year 2030, and his contract is 6 years, valued at 330 mil. So yeah, Josh Allen. I mean, he's a generational talent. He can arguably go throw for throw with Patty Mahomes. He's arguably better than Patrick Mahomes. So I mean, good for the Bills and good for the Allen family. And it's great to see someone of his caliber staying in the NFL, staying with his team as long as they have. That's a huge financial and time investment in him. So that's pretty great. The Steelers have traded for DK Metcalf. This one kind of caught, I think, everyone by surprise. I don't think anyone expected this to happen, but what do you know? I mean, again, this is the off season, so this is when crazy things happen. That the Steelers need some help. Also surprised that the Steelers did not get Darnold when they could have, but again, we'll talk about Darnold here in a bit. But yeah, the Steelers trade for DK Metcalf, pretty crazy for the Steelers there. The Rams have signed Jimmy Garoppolo, and I only bring this up because Jimmy G is considered to be one of the most handsome QBs in the NFL. There was talk that potentially we could pick him up for backup for the Vikings, but he went for the Rams, so yeah, they got themselves a good-looking QB there, and yeah, good for them, I guess. And then now we're getting to Sam Darnold, slinging Sammy Dimes. He signed with the Seahawks, the Sea Pukes, going from the Vikings to Seattle, and that contract is valued at 3 years, 100 mil, which is a little lower on the scale that I thought he would because Darnold Dimes, he was pretty washed up when the Vikings got him. Then he has the greatest season of his lifetime, hence why he's still in the NFL today and got the cash that he did. There was talk that, of course, the Vikings could re-sign him. There was talk that the Steelers might take him, that the Raiders might take him. He ends up going to the Seahawks. A little surprising, but good for him. Do I think he can run back the same success that he had with the Vikings next year? I do not. In fact, I do not think he could have done that had he stuck with the Vikings. With the Vikings, we won what? I don't know, 14 games, 13, something like that. I think Darnold could have got to 10 to 11 with the Vikings. Now with the Seahawks, I think he'll get to a cool 9 or 8. So we'll see what happens with Darnold there, but good for the Seahawks. And thank you, Sam Darnold, for an incredibly fun year with the Vikings. No one thought you would put up the numbers that you did, both in terms of yardage and in the win column. So really just fantastic. I know people in Fargo who have the Vikings Darnold jersey, so God bless them. But yeah, Sam Darnold was a really fun. He had a really fun time in Minnesota. Made a fun time for the fans as well. So you will be missed, but enjoy Seattle. I hear it gets cold over there. Let's see. The Jets have signed Justin Fields. Whatever. The Jets need help. I really only wrote this down as a show note just because the Jets need help like everywhere. And they signed Justin Fields for 2 years, 40 mil. So hopefully good for the Jets because they're, pretty fun, decent organization, and good for Justin Fields, I guess. But yeah, we'll see what happens now with the Jets now that they're off of the Aaron Rodgers. But we'll talk about him later. The Colts have signed Cam Bynum, former Viking. Sad to see him go, but I get it. He signed with the Colts for 4 years, 60 mil. So great for the Colts, great for Bynum. He's going to get paid handsomely, and he deserves to because he's pretty great. But yeah, sad to see him leave the Vikings. The Patriots have grabbed Joshua Dobbs, the Pastronaut, again, former Viking and former 49er and a handful of other teams. He was fun. He was a real good flash in the pan for the Vikings for about 2 weeks. I remember his time very fondly, and it's good to see him bouncing around the NFL still. He's still getting work, and the Patriots, the Pat Riots, need as much help as they can. So hopefully they get some good magic there with Joshua Dobbs. But we miss you from Minnesota. At least a portion of the fandom does before he blew four flats simultaneously. I got to see him play against the Bears, the Chicago Bears, at one point, so that was fun. And yeah, he did not excel then, but maybe he will without the Pat Riots. So we'll see what happens there with the Dobbs storyline. The Dolphins grab Zach Wilson. I like Zach Wilson. I'll die on that hill. I think he's fine. Is he Hall of Fame? No. Is he great? No. Is he good? Debatable. But I think he's fun, and I like the Dolphins. I've always liked Miami. I think they're a cool organization. So good for the Dolphins. Good for Zach Wilson. The Vikings have signed Ryan Kelly, and that's pretty huge because he is described as just this ape of a man, someone who can be a real force for whatever team he's on, and the fact that the Vikings have him now is pretty spectacular. I think he'll make a great center for the team. We certainly need help in that department. So yeah, that's pretty great. Also, with the Vikings here for a little while longer, the Vikings have re-signed Byron Murphy, 3 years, 66 mil. Fantastic. He's a talent. Good to see him stay with the organization, especially for that time and for that price as well. So yeah, good to have him stick around. The Vikings have signed Jonathan Allen for 3 years, 60 mil as well, nearly identical to what Byron Murphy got. Again, good to have him be with the organization for a good amount of time as well as for some good money as well. And then we're jumping now back to the Colts. The Colts have signed Daniel Jones, taking Daniel Jones actually from the Vikings, which is a bummer for me because I thought he could have made a great backup to whatever QB we have for the Vikings going into 2025. I believe that's going to be J.J. McCarthy, but Daniel Jones really, laid an egg with the Giants, but they're in the rumblings of the NFL halls. There's talk that Jones has the talent, just not the right infrastructure. And the Vikings were kind of known for their quarterback rehabilitation program. And I thought he could have done well with us. He got a little bit of it for the time that he was here with the Vikings, but not nearly enough to, I think, have talent on the field. So we'll see what the Colts can do with him. But yeah, I think it's a bummer for Daniel Jones to lose the Vikings, and I think it's a bummer for the Vikings to lose Daniel Jones. But we'll see what happens there. I don't know if this has already happened at the time of this recording or not because it's been a few days since I wrote these notes. But the Cardinals are expected to sign Jacoby Brisket. So good for the Cardinals. At one point, I thought I was going to have some family relations going to Arizona, so I would have been a backdoor Cardinals fan. I don't know what's happening there. But yeah, if I do end up becoming a Cardinals fan, even in a small way, signing Jacoby Brisket is pretty good. The Bills have extended DeMar Hamlin, which I can't believe this guy is still in the NFL. And I don't mean that in a malicious way. I just mean that with the severity of the injury that he suffered and the public, display of it, I thought for sure that the NFL would not take another risk of him getting re-injured. But since him coming back to the NFL, he's been good. He's been a talent for the Bills, and it's really good to see him continue to play despite his injury. Because we all remember, when that happened, and so it's good to see him still on the field, and just God bless him for good health and a good long career to boot as well. Going back to the Vikings, Harrison Smith will stay with the Vikings for his 14th season, probably his last. But hey, if this is his swan song, fantastic. He's earned it. he will go into the Vikings Hall of Fame if he isn't already. And yeah, he's been a lot of fun to watch over the years. Even before I was a big Viking fan, I knew who he was. And so now to see him run it back probably one more time with the Vikings, now that I'm a super fan, it's going to be a lot of fun. Adam Thielen, pour one out for him. He is sadly not going to the Vikings. He's not returning. He has a ex, excuse me. He has decided to stay with the Panthers. He is extending his career with them, going back for his 12th season in the NFL. And yeah, Adam Thielen was a real talent. I think he is sorely missed in Minnesota. I think he would be great on this current team of Vikings that we now have, but he is staying with the crummy Panthers. Hey, look, the Panthers are due for some success, and I hope Adam Thielen can bring that to them. I hope that he can go out on a high note, depending on if this is his last season or not. And as I said, Carolina's due. But yeah, we miss you, Adam Thielen, here in Minnesota. And if you got more gas in the tank and you want out of Carolina, give us a call, please. We'd be happy to pick up the phone. And then also with the Vikings as well. And again, I'm not fully sure if this stuff has died out yet or if it's only increased at the time of this recording. There's potential that Aaron Rodgers could go to the Vikings. There's been a lot of talk about that as well. Aaron Rodgers, God bless him. He's a generational talent, one of the best QBs to ever do it. But he's quite, near the end of his career here. I don't want to say washed up because I think he probably has legitimately like one good year left. But there's talk that he could go to the Vikings. Very similar to Brett Favre. Could Brett Favre went from Green Bay to the Jets to the Vikings. History may repeat itself. Favre to the Green Bay to the Jets to the Vikings. I don't want him, but there's talk that at one point we were thinking about it, though the last time I checked, I think we kind of cooled on that, which thank goodness. But we'll see what happens. I do hope Rodgers goes somewhere, because I want to see him end on a high note. I really do. I mean that. But I don't want it to be to the Vikings. And then also, I know at one point there was talk that the Vikings might trade for Justin Herbert. That has been talked about at least over the last year, if not 15 months or so. I think it's a little late for that to happen now. It would have to happen pretty soon if we were going to. That would also mean that we would be trading a lot. We'd probably trade J.J. McCarthy plus something else to get Justin Herbert, though he is a real talent. I think he just needs better infrastructure. He's got the arm talent and the headspace to be a great QB. He already is, but he could do better elsewhere. And if we did get Justin Herbert, and if KOC got to coach him, there's a real potential that the Vikings would be a genuine bona fide Super Bowl team for 2025. Could happen with JJ McCarthy, but we'll see. But yeah, there's been talk that potentially Rodgers and Herbert could come to the Vikings, though I think at this time both of those have died out. So that is my football talk for this episode of the Far Out Podcast. And now I want to stick with sports for one more topic, but I want to transition sports again. So we've gone from baseball to football, now to basketball, because I went to my first ever Timberwolves game on March 14th, and this was the Timberwolves versus the Magic, the Orlando Magic. And let me tell you, I have not been a big NBA fan. I'm very new to this sport. I think I'm a fan of 2 years now. My first exposure to the team and really the hype around the Wolves was when we were facing the Denver Nuggets in the playoffs, and I got to see that at a loaded Buffalo Wild Wings, and the place was going crazy. Every possession, every shot, every missed shot, every layup, every dunk, the place was just jumping, and it was crazy. So I became a fan, and then I went to go see them play live against the Magic, and boy, Target Center was just jumping and roaring too. It was crazy. People were standing up. We were shouting, getting to see Ant-Man, Anthony Edwards, just go crazy on him. Also, shout out to Jaden McDaniels, number 3, my favorite player right now. Getting to see him go crazy was awesome. The atmosphere of Target Center was amazing. They put on a really great show, and it was a really fun game. At one point, we were down by 11 against the Magic, and then the Wolves came back, and it was going shot for shot, and it was crazy. It was not a blowout for either team. We were, on the edge of your seat type thing, and I was standing up, I was jumping, I was cheering. It was just freaking fantastic. So the Wolves put on a great show, and yeah, it's really good to be a big fan of Minnesota sports. I love the Wolves, the Vikings, and the Twins. Minnesota Wild hockey. I'm trying, man. I'm trying to get into you, but it just takes a little bit of time. But yeah, the Wolves, really just a lot of fun to see them win for my first game ever. And boy, you guys put on a great show. And so yeah, that'll end the sports segment of today's show. Hope you enjoyed this breakdown of baseball and football and basketball. And like I said, there with the Wild. Potentially, maybe I'll get into the into hockey. I used to love hockey at one point, but not so much anymore. But yeah, I'll go for the four-peat there on Minnesota teams. But yeah, hope you enjoyed, and just thank you for listening to this part of the show. Anyway, moving on. Now we're gonna get into some real stuff, some real serious stuff here, kids. Stuff impacting the real world. And then we'll get back to some other fun stuff here. Elon Musk, Mr. Elongated Muskrat, known for Tesla, SpaceX, and Twitter, formerly known as Twitter. He has a plan to get humans to Mars as soon as 2029. Yes, kids. So this plan that he's had for decades to get humanity off of Earth into another planet, that being Mars. He has a plan to get humans there by 2029, though he says 2031 is more likely, and that he has a plan to have a mission to Mars depart at the end of next year carrying his robot named Optimus, not Prime, not Optimus Prime, just Optimus. So look, I think that's fantastic. I think Elon Musk is a modern day Tony Stark. I think he's pushing the boundaries of space travel, of technology. I mean, the dude's building freaking robots and sending them into space. As you know, do I want robots? As much as the movies predict, I do not. See Terminator for reference. Do I want AI as much as people are talking about? No. See Terminator for reference. But look, this stuff is just going to keep evolving. We're going to keep pushing the envelope, and going to Mars, I'm there, and heck, I'd be there if he said, "You, yes, you, if you want to go to Mars, would you?" I would say absolutely. And so, Elon Musk, if you're listening to this episode, and I know that you are, please reach out to me via Twitter, and we'll get that going for me to get to Mars there by 2029, which is only 4 years away. And so if he's correct, even if he's correct about 2030, 2031, that's less than a decade away. So I mean, the fact that he's talking about sending humanity to Mars inside of a decade is pretty crazy. But we'll see what happens there. But then also keeping it really real. Well, actually, before I get off the Mars thing here, he did make another comment regarding Mars and how he intends to have humanity, actually a couple million people. He says that if the first stages of flights to Mars goes well, we could have millions of people on Mars in 20 to 30 years. So we'll see what happens there. But yes, potentially 2029 is the first year in which humanity will leave Earth and go to another planet. But also moving off of the stars and keeping it on Earth here just for a little while longer. Um, JFK files have been released. I don't know what this really means. Look, JFK is probably one of the mother loads when it comes to conspiracy theories and whatnot. And, people have been wanting the quote unquote answer for this for decades worth of time. And under the Trump administration, he has released more files, presumably all of the JFK files, which may or may not detail some of what happened. I really don't know what else there is to reveal, because I think at the time of Trump doing this under his second administration, um, I believe already most of the JFK files have been released. So I don't know what else there is to release, nor do I think that, you know, I don't think this new batch of JFK files will have the bombshell that people are waiting for. Maybe it will. Maybe it will, because I think there's thousands of documents, and I'm not going to read all of them. But when someone somewhere out there does a comprehensive guide or a breakdown of what's important, maybe it'll have what we're looking for. Who knows? I would like more information regarding what happened, because I think there is still a lot of mystery regarding a very pivotal time in America's history. But yeah, I don't mean to be a hater, but don't hold your breath, because I think most of the information that's already needed to be released. It's been released by the time of Trump doing the second batch of stuff. Um, but I also encourage people to go at this with an open mind, in the sense that, look, if the JFK if this new batch of files does not confirm what you're looking for, well, don't leave and go, "Oh, well, of course, the government would never reveal the true secrets." Okay, well, if that's your prerogative, then nothing is going to convince you. Okay, they give you 110% of the evidence, and if you're still not convinced, it's because you don't want to be convinced. And so, if you read through this stuff, now all of it, if you read through it comprehensively, and if you determine it is proving your theory or it is not proving your theory, you have to take it for what it is. You can't just keep, you know, driving the same thing into the ground here. You have to know when to pick up your ball and go home. And so if this new batch of JFK files, reveals information that the public needs to see, great. If not, well, tomorrow's a new day, and just carry on your way and try to be the best person that you can be. All right, kids, for this last portion of the show, we're going to go to film school. Better yet, forget film school, kids. Let's go to the theater, because that's the best film school you'll ever get. If you want to learn about film, you want to study film, you want to know how to make film, just go to films. Just watch movies. And we're going to talk about movies because I got a lot I want to say, both in terms of reviews and stuff that's in development and other stuff. So yeah, let's just dive right in. We're going to start off with some movies that I did not like. And one of them is a new release known as Mickey 17. This stars Robert Pattinson, who is now a Batman. Formerly he was a vampire, now he's a bat. And yeah, Mickey 17. I really, really did not like this movie, and I was so disappointed by it, because this is coming from director Bong Joon-ho. This is his follow-up to the Academy Award-winning Parasite, and Parasite is a beautiful, marvelous movie, really fantastic. And yeah, this was his big budget sci-fi epic. He got to do whatever he wanted, and he chose this. And I really, really did not like it for several reasons. One of them is that I did not find the film funny. I thought there could have been some good comedic bits that could have happened here. Also, the premise of the film is that there's this guy named Mickey who his job, his lot in life is that he is a reusable in the sense that his body gets digitally printed every time he dies, and so he goes out and he's on these dangerous missions. So like if they need someone to explore the inside of a volcano, just send him, because if he gets killed, they just reprint a new one, and they have his mind downloaded and his consciousness and the whole deal. So they have his memories, and he's able to feel everything, remember everything, and so yeah, that's the story of Mickey 17. Hence why it's called that, because there's been 17 Mickeys, because all of them have died while on various jobs. You could have done some great storytelling with showing some really unique deaths. Have him get eaten by a creature, have him fall into a black hole, have him, fall off a rocket as it's blasting into space. I don't know, but there was none of that, and instead, Bong Joon-ho wanted to use this as an avenue to tell a much more dramatic tale that had to do with a lot of political undertones, which I'm not against either, because film could be a great device for telling many narratives. However, I think he went a little too hard on real world politics that we have nowadays, because there are many allusions to Trump and to conservatives that's happening very currently in America. And look, I'm not a filmmaker. He is, and he was given essentially a blank check to tell whatever story he wanted. If he wanted to have this be in line with politics, go for it. But like, I thought he should have done it with a little bit of a lighter hand, because look, I'm not, as I've said many times, I won't hide who I am. I'm a conservative. I voted for Trump. And movies, going to the theater, watching entertainment is meant to be an escape from the real world. And to have it so in your face throughout this film that Bong Joon-ho clearly has opinions of Trump, and what I derive from the film is that he's not a fan of Trump or his administration or his followers, the people that vote for him, his constituents, whatever you want to call him. Like, the fact that he has such derision for those people, just, it did not sit well with me as a viewer. Made me feel kind of like an outcast. Perhaps that's what he wanted to do, and if he did, okay, he succeeded, but like I love going to films too. Like, I don't see why you have to deride one side to, inflate the other. A rising tide raises all ships, but Mark Ruffalo, he plays this space mogul who has this idea to take humanity to the stars and repopulate and stuff. And he talks like Trump, has literal mannerisms. He even does the Trump dance, shaking his wrists and whatnot. And the people that vote for him, they wear red hats. Like, I mean, you can't get much more on the nose than that. So again, if you're gonna make allusions to real world politics, I just wish that he would have done one of or two of the things, not all three. I mean, I mean this legitimately. You ditch the red hats and you ditch the dance, and you just leave the mannerisms. I think as a viewer, I would have been like, is this meant to be Trump? Because if that was it, then it could have been really just more entertaining. And so the whole time I was watching it, I was like, he's making conservatives look stupid. Which again, it's his film, it's his politics. He can do whatever he wants, man. He's making the film, not me. But yeah, just Mickey 17. I thought got a little too close to home on people who are not fans of the Trump administration. So whatever. But as a film itself, did not find it funny, did not find it entertaining. Thought they missed the mark on having some cool deaths. As a sci-fi story, didn't really work for me. I've seen this premise many times. Thought the cast was wasted. Robert Pattinson, who plays multiple people. No, that's he's called a multiple, I think, not a whatever I said. Anyway, semantics. He's great because he plays multiple roles, so good for him. But Steven Yeun, who's from The Walking Dead and Invincible, I thought he was wasted as well. Special effects were great. They clearly spent their money. There. I don't think it's worth as much as it was. This film is like what 130 million plus. You probably could have made it for under 100 mil, but it looked good for what it was. But yeah. Oh, and also I found this whole thing gross, and so and again, perhaps this plays into politics, but like there's this idea of conserving food and resources, and so they like the people that they have flying across the stars across space, they have their food intake limited to a certain number of calories, and so they've banned certain physical activities that burn a lot of calories. One of them being having sex, doing the dance with no pants, because that burns a lot of calories, and so the Mark Ruffalo character, the space mogul, he says, "Look, when you get to the new planet, we're gonna form into a new society for humans. You guys can go crazy in the bedroom." And so he doesn't call it a space expedition. He calls it a space sex petition. Huh? You get it? You get it? You get the wordplay there? But again, they went really hard on the paint about sex and all that stuff, and I was just like, I can't. I like this is too off-putting for me. So yeah, I was not a fan of Mickey 17. Maybe you'll like it if you decide to check it out. But yeah, just was disappointed by this one. But also, sticking with another movie, I was disappointed by. This is 1999's The Insider, which is made by Michael Mann, which is a filmmaker I love. I mean, his films are fantastic. Heat, phenomenal. My favorite cops and robbers film ever. Collateral, phenomenal. You get to see Tom Cruise play a villain. Uh, Last of the Mohicans, phenomenal. Daniel Day-Lewis, let's go. Even well, I was gonna say Ferrari, but I wasn't a big fan of that. That was one of his more later movies. Um, but oh, Miami Vice, pretty good, pretty good. But The Insider, 1999. Uh, Look, this is a straightforward drama. It has to do with the integrity of journalism, sticking to your guns, not bowing down to pressure. So it's a drama, and it's very heavy-handed. But boy, this film was slow. This thing either lives or dies via its dialogue and its performances, and there are good performances in this film, and there's good dialogue as well. But man, I'm a lover of film. I love Michael Mann. I think he's fantastic. But I had to work through this film. I found it long. I found it boring, and I didn't. I just didn't think it was entertaining. And when you're trying to tell a story as serious as this, I think at the very bare minimum, you have to be entertaining. Because I had never heard of this story, that this is a story that, dates back to 60 Minutes taking on Big Tobacco, and so like on paper, that's an interesting premise. Again, journalism versus a big corporation, but like I had not known of this story. This movie was my very first introduction ever to this story, and I thought that the film did not grab me about the story, and I just didn't find that the ride I took for the 2.5 hours, I didn't think it was entertaining. And like I said, 2.5 hours. This thing took me 2 days because it was such a slog. And the only reason why I didn't abandon it was because when I finally checked the timestamp and I realized I was over halfway through, I was like, well, I have to see it to its conclusion now. I can't just abandon the film and turn it off and never watch it again. I'm this far invested, so let's go. And yeah, again, look, the performances are great. Michael Mann is a heck of a filmmaker, but this one did not hit for me. Maybe it will for you, but again, it's a very heavy-handed, very slow drama. So not for everyone, but could be up your alley if you're interested. But in terms of stuff that I did like, now we're getting into that side of things here. A new film that released this year, 2025, coming from Steven Soderbergh, Black Bag. It will be advertised as a spy movie, which I guess it kind of is, but it's really more of a whodunit in the sense that it has to do with characters working inside the CIA, but it's a whodunit about finding out the mole in the agency. And speaking of the agency, this is very close to that TV show I love so much on Paramount Plus because this stars Michael Fassbender working in the CIA in the London section of the CIA. So boom, there you go. Yeah, but Black Bag is pretty great. A very slow burn as well, though. Whereas The Insider failed in its slowness, Black Bag excels because Black Bag 90 minutes, you're in and you're out. It's not a big time commitment, but for that 90 minutes that you're there, I mean, this is a slow burn movie that is like a glass of wine in the sense that you're just sipping and just getting flavor and flavor over time. It's really remarkable. Much like The Insider, lives and dies on its performances and its dialogue, and it's amazing. The set design is incredible. The lighting of this film is really unique in the sense that every light source, from candles to headlights, taillights, street lights, it's really overexposed. Like the lights are really blown out in this film. Has a great contrast to the darkness that you see throughout it as well. At least that's how it was in my theater experience. Perhaps that's not the intended way for it to be seen. I don't know, but for me and how I viewed it, the lights were really blown out for me. And I thought that was really interesting. But yeah, Black Bag, not a big movie, not getting a lot of play. If you can see it in a theater, please do. I think you'll really enjoy yourself. And because again, it's a spy mystery. This is not a big bang bang pew pew movie, nor is this real gadget heavy. This is just like, again, it's a mystery. It's a detective movie set in the world of spies, and it's really great. So if you can see it in a theater, please do. But if you can't, and you can catch it streaming somewhere, I recommend Black Bag, 100%. And now we're going to talk about a relatively recent film. It did not come out this year, but it came out last year, and this is 2024's The Order. This is a crime thriller film directed by Justin Kurzel, who made that 2016 film Assassin's Creed, based off the video game series of the same name. And much like BVS, I really have to push to like that Assassin's Creed movie, but boy, is that even more of an uphill climb. So I kind of just leave that behind. But anyway, The Order is a period piece drama which centers around an FBI agent going after a white supremacist terror group in the 1980s. And this film is phenomenal. This thing blew my mind and it exceeded my expectations. I missed it in its original run as it had a limited theater release and it did not come close to me. Very unfortunate for that, but yeah, had I gotten the chance to see this in a theater, I think I would have been on the floor by the time this ended because the performances are incredible. Jude Law and Nicholas Holt. carry this film brilliantly. Nicholas Hoult, by the way, is in Superman coming out this July. So, yeah, but yeah, the performances are great. The cinematography is gorgeous. The landscape shots, the way this film is physically captured, beautiful, very picturesque. The color in this film, remarkable, really pops. The sound design, impeccable. I mean, you hear every footstep, every gunshot, amazing. Speaking of gunshots, the action is amazing. They spare no expense. They really sell you on the hard hits and the severity of the combat. Really, really tremendous stuff. And this film really excels in giving you villains that you love to hate and heroes that you want to see succeed. And it's really, really remarkable. And Nicholas Hoult plays the leader of a white supremacist group, and he is so creepy and so unsettling that it's gonna make your skin crawl. But you're also so incredibly engrossed in his performance that it like you can't look away. And then you have Jude Law, who is this rough and gruff, FBI agent who, like, by any means necessary, he'll get after this group. And it again, you want to see him succeed, but like at what cost, and like do others, pay for his mistakes and stuff. Like it's a really remarkable story of these two unstoppable forces running into each other, and we have to see which one budges. And it is based on a historical account. So if you want to read up on the film itself, you can. But I really recommend you watch this film because this, of course, if you go through public school, you learn about the KKK and that portion of history. But this film is centered on a smaller piece of that overall history, dealing with a section of a supremacist group that exists in Idaho. And I just found this film to be flooring, and I don't want to spoil it for anyone. I really think you should seek this film out. And it also stars Mark Maron, which, he has a podcast and a history in radio. And so it's great to see him actually be on screen as well. So, yeah, The Order, just really, really tremendous. It is currently the second best film I've seen all year. It's only behind Ben-Hur, the original Ben-Hur. But The Order, I mean, I could rewatch this film tonight. I just thought it was phenomenal. I might even get it on Blu-ray because it is a film that I want to go back to just because I thought it was just such a great piece of art. And it's also really entertaining. And not to tear one film down to raise up another, but as I talked about with The Insider, that's a very heavy subject matter, was not entertaining. The Order, a very heavy subject matter, but also very entertaining to watch. And yeah, I just really found this film to be tremendous, and it's kind of a quiet find. I don't think a lot of people know about it because again, it did not have a wide theater release. But please, if you do listen to this podcast and you made it this far in the show, thank you for listening. But if you're looking for a film recommendation and something that is a little more on the heavier side, if you're looking for a good drama, I recommend The Order, as I found it tremendous, and I hope you enjoy the film. And keeping it with film review, speaking of baseball, earlier I rewatched the film Moneyball, the 2011 film starring Brad Pitt as Billy Bean, who worked for the Oakland Athletics. And it's very poignant to talk about them as well because, now in 2025, the Oakland A's are no longer the Oakland A's. They've been acquired by Las Vegas. And watching this film nowadays, both with just a love of baseball and a love of, having a home representation in a major league sport like that. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it brought a tear to my eye, now having this piece of history that no longer exists with the Oakland A's. And again, if you're a fan of baseball, if you're really into the minutia of, clocking pitches and determining salaries and stuff like that. I mean, if you're really a fan of baseball, you're going to appreciate Moneyball. But if you're a fan of the Oakland A's and if you're a fan of baseball history, you should watch this film now because there's a whole new layer to it now of you just want to see this team succeed and how they went from, last to first, and they did it with almost no money and everyone was against them. And the Oakland A's, they succeeded, and now to not have them be in Oakland is just it's sad. And look, I don't mean to make this segment of it this whole thing on, the state of Major League Baseball and of sports. But I mean, Oakland had both of their teams taken by Las Vegas. They lost the Raiders, so football, then they lost the A's, baseball. And it's like, were the people of Las Vegas clamoring for sports representation? I sadly don't think so. I think that that's clearly a business monetary greed play, whereas the people of Oakland, I think that they yearn for a team again. And again, just watching this film and being the fan of baseball that I am, and having it be on the heels of the season starting. I miss the Oakland A's, but this film is really tremendous. Brad Pitt leads it with a stellar performance. It's a very hard-hitting drama in the sense that, like I said, you watch guys go from the bottom to the top, and Chris Pratt is in it. This was really a big thing for him before he got big as an actor himself, so it's fun to see him. But yeah, Moneyball is a really tremendous film, and as I said, if you're a fan of baseball, please watch it. If you're a fan of sports films, please watch it. But if you're someone who misses the Oakland A's, watch it as well. I think you should do it at least for that fandom, for that team, for that organization. And yeah, Moneyball was really good to revisit it, but man, it hit twice as hard this time. So yeah, I recommend the film. But transitioning now into a much more lighter, much more fun, much more jovial film. I took my ma to the movies, and we saw a re-release of the film Transformers One. This is an animated Transformers film that came out in 2024, went very much under the radar, which is a real shame because this film was tremendous. This is set before the classic war that we all know. So no Optimus in this one, no Megatron. You get to see those characters develop, but it's really the feud of those two characters. You get to see the birth of the hero Optimus and the birth of the villain Megatron. And this film is really great. It looks gorgeous. It's so colorful and bright and fun. Has a great voice cast. The action is tremendous, and the story itself is amazing. It's got so much emotion to it, so much heart. If you're a fan of Transformers, as myself, please watch it. I really highly recommend. And if you're a fan of animated films, please watch it. And if you're also a fan of good storytelling and a fun time that you can sit down with the whole family and engage with it, whether you're age 5, 15, or 35, I really think anyone can enjoy this film. And I really appreciated getting to take my mom to it and getting to see it in a theater the way that films are meant to be seen. So yeah, Transformers 1, really, really tremendous film, and I wish it had more fans. So please check it out. And then also, keeping with re-releases, my mother and I also went to a re-release of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, the third installment, the final one in his quote trilogy. Harrison's Ford, his trilogy of Indiana Jones films before he went on to before he went on to go make Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and what was that last one called? Dial of Destiny. Yeah, and boy, getting to see The Last Crusade on the big screen, again, the way films are meant to be seen, tremendous. But I have not watched this film in a while, The Last Crusade, and I think after seeing it now on the big screen, it might be my favorite Indiana Jones film. It's really tremendous. They go all out in this one. I mean, there's a foot chase, a boat chase, a plane chase, a tank chase, a car chase, explosions, like every facet of action possible, they went for, and it's told through an amazing story with gripping performances, and adventure has a name, and his name is Indiana Jones. I mean, come on, you can't get any more classic than this. This is when Harrison Ford and Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, they were all firing on all cylinders, really just at the top of their craft, and it's amazing. And yeah, getting to see it on the big screen was amazing. But if you haven't seen the film in a while, I really recommend you go and revisit it because it was better than I remember, and I think it'll be better than you remember too. So yeah, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade is one of the greatest films ever made, and I highly recommend you check it out. And then now we're going to get off of reviews and we're going to go more into film news. And we're going to start off with this Starship Troopers. If you're not familiar with this is an older sci-fi film of space marines versus giant bugs, which is it's really, really great, really fun, really self-aware of itself. and it's getting a remake, and it's being or maybe a sequel or a resequel, whatever you want to call it, but it's getting a new adaptation from director Neil Blomkamp, who made films such as Chappie, District 9, Elysium, and most recently Gran Turismo, which is a racing film, which I really, really enjoyed. And I can't wait. I love the original Starship Troopers. I'm a big fan of Neil Blomkamp. I know people don't love all his films post District 9. I'm in the minority. I like Elysium. I like Chappie. I like Gran Turismo. I mean, I think he's a real good filmmaker, and I think that he would excel amazingly with the Starship Troopers property. At one point, he was going to make an alien film set, in that series with Sigourney Weaver. He was also going to do a RoboCop film, so I mean, he's kind of chomping at the bit for this older IP stuff. But I love Starship Troopers, and I think he'll work great in this. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to how this film shapes up. And then also, there's talks that A Quiet Place Part 3 is in development. And I think I might have mentioned this on an earlier episode of the podcast, but I consider the first Quiet Place, the one with John Krasinski and Emily Blunt, I consider that film to be perfect. And I mean that literally, not just like, oh my gosh, like, isn't it amazing? No, I think that film, from an execution, development, writing, direction, action, acting level, I think that film hits every beat possible, and I consider it to be perfect. I really, really do. Quiet Place Part 2, sadly, not as good as the first. Still good, just not as good as the first. And then they did a prequel called A Quiet Place Day One, which I did not see, but now it sounds like there's going to be a part three, a direct continuation to parts one and two. And yeah, sign me up, man. I think the Quiet Place franchise is really awesome, and so I'll take another bite of that apple, and then eventually I'll work my way around to watching day one. But yeah, part three is reportedly in development, and then also a another part three to a series. The Accountant 3 is reportedly in development on the heels of its sequel, Accountant 2, coming out this April. That's a film I'm looking forward to. There's reportedly plans for a third installment, which I hope to be true because that first film is tremendous. The first Accountant, I think, is really great. And then it took 9 years to get the sequel, so they did not strike while the iron was hot. But hopefully now, if the Accountant 2 is good, they can strike while the iron's hot and get a third one out, in less than 9 years, hopefully in less than three. I've heard The Accountant 2 is good. I've heard the first reactions are calling it amazing and even better than the first, which I find that hard to believe because I think that first film is so great. So that's a high bar to beat, but people have said, hey, it's really, really good. The Accountant 2 has not done it for me in terms of marketing. I don't like the posters or the trailers, but if the overall film is good, then great. But yeah, if The Accountant 2 is as good as I'm hearing, and they're thinking of doing a third installment, then bring it on. And that is reportedly in development. And then now transitioning to a film that is in the can, on the way, coming to us this summer, this June, I believe. There is a new trailer and poster for the Brad Pitt racing movie called F1, and I'm really, really excited for this film. This film is going to tide me over for Superman's arrival this summer, because remember, Superman comes out this July, and F1 comes out this June, and I think this film looks tremendous. This is from director Joseph Kosinski, who made movies such as Oblivion and Tron Legacy, but he also did Top Gun Maverick, and it really looks like he's trying to recreate that formula. He's trying to capture that same lightning in a bottle again, whereas Top Gun Maverick was about an older pilot teaching the newer pilots how to fly. F1 appears to be an older racer played by Brad Pitt teaching newer racers how to drive. And I'm there, and this is made by Apple, and Apple has made some really great films, and it sounds like they gave Kaczynski and Co. a blank check. Sounds like they built real tracks, real race cars, and all that good stuff. And I'm just really looking forward to this film. This thing looks thrilling and fun and exciting and big and grand, and I can't wait. And yeah, F1 comes out this June, And now for the last segment on today's show, I want to keep with film, but rather than look at current film and upcoming film, I want to take a step back and look at previous films in regards to some comments that Carrie-Ann Moss made, one of the stars of the Matrix trilogy. She has reflected on the trilogy and the career she could have had and how she chose to be a mother instead. If you don't know, Carrie-Ann Moss was one of the co-leads. She played Trinity alongside Keanu Reeves as Neo, and she recently spoke with Variety about her decisions that she's made in life since the Matrix trilogy. And I'll throw her comments up on screen, but I want to read them to you as well because I think that they're really just tremendous. And she goes on to say, after the Matrix was such a big deal, I took a big break to have children and be with them. I remember being torn, having a little twinge, like, gosh, I'm getting offered such great things. That would be such a huge deal. And I was holding my baby in my arms, and I remember thinking, at the end of my life, will it matter to me that I have another movie on my resume, or will it matter to me that I held my baby? And I instantly thought, no, it was just a no-brainer, and I'm so glad I did that. I'm so glad I don't have that regret. That to me is beautiful. That's tremendous. Kids, you have to think about this. The Matrix as a whole, the entire trilogy, but really that first film, but let's look at the whole thing. The Matrix is considered to be one of the greatest science fiction pieces ever put to film. I mean, this really punched her ticket into stardom. She could have had this huge career, and as she said, she gave up on huge offers. Who knows what they were? But Carrie-Ann Moss, rather than pursue fame and fortune, pursued family. And I think that's just really tremendous. And in today's day and age that wants to pursue being single and selfish and only pursuing oneself and one's own sense of achievement, she found success and achievement and a purpose in life outside of the silver screen, outside of this mass appeal. She found it in being a mother, and she doesn't regret that. After all these years, she does not regret that. And I think that's just really tremendous and something that's really lost in today's day and age. And it really just made my heart happy and really brought a smile to my face to be able to read that and to see that. And I really give a lot of credit to Carrie-Ann Moss choosing to be a mother over this superstardom that she could have had. And yeah, I wanted to leave the show on a good note. I wanted to leave it on an uplifting note, and I mean, what better way than this? And so yeah, just really, I tip my hat to you, Mrs. Moss, and I hope you and your child have a great life, and you have a great family wherever you are. And that's my show for today, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank you so much for listening. Please look forward to upcoming films like Superman, but then also consider checking out previous films like The Order. I think that's really tremendous. And I just hope you have a good rest of your week, rest of your month. And I will talk to you in the next one. All right. See you later. Bye bye.